What's good, y'all? My name is Darius, and I'm back with more of the 101 in Warframe. Now, I ran through various subjects that explain some of the more core concepts of Warframe in its entirety. But in this video, I'm going to teach you about something more lucrative in terms of how you get resources or materials in the game. And I'm talking about farming. Farming, in essence, is more or less a sort of tedious way of getting some of the materials, but that's what I'm doing this for, so you can farm more effectively and get the resources that you need. So before I get into it, be sure to like, subscribe, hit the bell, and be sure to follow me on my socials, which will be down in the description box below. Now, with all that being said, let's get into this 101. Now, a few videos ago, I explained about the various things about everything from the foundry to the mods and pretty much everything available. One of the things I held off on teaching you guys is about farming. Now, depending on how you view farming, farming can be seen as a sort of a way to get different materials, but you pretty much understand how to get the materials. One of the key things to learn about farming is knowing what resource to get and where to get it from. And before we jump into the more advanced way of getting materials, I'm going to go ahead and go back to the foundry, and I'll explain from there exactly what you need to be focusing on. Now, a while ago I explained various things about the different blueprints and the type of items that you need in order to effectively farm in Warframe. Some items can be gotten by being in the open world area, or it can be gotten from one of the planets. Now, I explained about the foundry before, about the different weapons and different items. So to give you a general understanding, and more or less a refresher, the blueprints you get will have preset resources that are needed in order to get said items. And naturally, down here, it will tell you how much of what you need in order to build said item. The right hand part dictates how much you need to build the item, and the left hand part tells you how much of a resource that you have. So because of that, some of the resources you may get may be found on more than one planet, depending on where you go. So, to get said resources, you could do one of two things. You can either farm the resource manually by going to the planet itself that has the resource, or you can go into the marketplace and buy the resource outright with platinum. But for those that rather work for specific items or specific things, you could do so by going to the star chart. Oh, before I forget, I'll give you a rough example of how to farm certain resources. So as usual, and I'll reiterate again, you get a whole wall of blueprints right here in the foundry. Whenever you find something new, you always have requirements that you need in order to build said item or weapon. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll just give you guys an example. For example, the dread here is a weapon that drops off the stalker in game. I'm not going to go into detail about the stalker, as that's also something completely foreign in its entirety, but I'm not going to worry about that. So, say for example you get the blueprint, the dread. Naturally, you're going to see a few things about it. One thing you're going to notice is that you're going to need a resource called Morphix, you're going to need circuits, you're going to need polymer bundle, and you're going to need plastids. The best course of action would be is to go to a planet that has two or more of a certain resource. For example, if I want polymer bundle, naturally the only places I'll be able to get it is on Venus or a few other areas. Now you notice that I just mentioned just the polymer bundles by themselves. You could go to one planet and get polymer bundles any day of the week. But a lucrative way is to find a place that not only has polymer bundles, but also has circuits as well. At the same time, you also want to make sure it has either Morphix or plastids as well. So, we're going to use that as a baseline. polymer bundle, circuits, morphics. So, since I want to build that, I'm going to want to go to a planet that has at least 2 or more of that resource. So, in order to change stuff around, actually, I forgot to mention, there's one other way you can get resources as well, but I'm not going to bother going into it that deep. But anyway, we would need morphics, we need polymer bundles, and we need circuits. And if possible, we could get plastics as well. The first place we could go to is Venus. Now you notice, resources are done in order of how you get them. Resources come as common, uncommon, and rare. Uncommon resources you'll get by the hundreds, basically. So you get alloy plates and polymer bundles pretty much in the... Well, you get alloy plates mostly because they come in the hundreds. Uncommon resources, like polymer bundles, are something that you'll get them, I say 100 at a time or so, maybe more. Circuits and field drawn samples are referred to as rare. You get these only in the single digits, such as ones. Now, you notice that we actually meet 2 of the requirements. We got polymer bundles and we got circuits. Naturally, we can farm on this planet whenever we want to get these 2 resources. And as a side effect, we'll also get alloy plates and field drawn samples as well. But maybe there's another planet that has what you need. Let's see Uranus real quick. This is also a decent area too. But in this area, you'll get polymer bundles as a common resource, plastics as an uncommon resource, gallium and detonite ampules as a rare resource. Now, you'll notice that polymer bundles is actually higher on the scale, so you'll be getting these in the hundreds a lot. Plastics you won't be getting too many of, but it's a really decent place to get a lot of resources from. Gallium and detonite ampules isn't necessary, but you'll more than likely need those later down the road. Now, let's go to Neptune. Now, you notice that you don't have any of the resources in this general area, so we're going to skip on that. Now, we have Pluto. Rubido is going to be a common resource that you'll get. Actually, alloy plates is still going to be common. Rubido and plastics are going to be uncommon, while morphics is going to be more or less the rare resource. And I may have kind of skewed it all up in a real weird way, but the resources and how you get them is basically the rarer the resource, the less of it you'll get. But anyway, here we actually have 2 resources we could get from here. We could get plastics and we could get morphics. And since morphics we don't need too many of in order to build it, we only need about, I believe, 5 or 9 depending on it. We could get a ton of that here, and we could get a ton of plastics from here as well. But you'll notice that we have 3 planets that we can get all this stuff from. So, how do you farm effectively in order to get said resources? Well, to be honest, it all depends on what resource you need and how much of it you need down the road. Now, for me, if I wanted said resource, I would farm the resources separate from one another. Like on this one, I would get morphics and plastics. So naturally, I would go to Pluto. However, if I wanted to get the circuits, I would go here to get the polymer bundle and the circuits from here. Going to Uranus is lucrative, but it's not necessary to get it since I need more of one resource than another. So naturally, I would rather go to one planet and get polymer bundles and get circuits instead of getting plastids. Instead of getting, plastids and morphics from another area. So, in other words, I wouldn't come to Uranus for getting, said resource. Because the one thing you want to do is you want to balance which resource you need and how much of it you need. So say for example you got enough polymer bundle and enough plastids. The only thing you need is morphics the only thing you need is morphics and circuits. So naturally you would go to any planet that has circuits, or any planet that has the Morphics. There are tons of planets that has a ton of resources. Every time you go into a planet, go into the planet itself, it gives you a certain amount of resources that you can have. Well, the amount of resources the planet itself have, so you know exactly where to farm. So, say for example you collected all the resources you need from said planet. Naturally, you would go back to the foundry, scroll to the item that you want to build, and you would build it. So in this case, I would need 6 Morphics, I need 900 circuits, 900 plastids, and 50 polymer bundles. Well, 750 polymer bundles. So naturally, these 2 resources you're going to be grinding out to get constantly. And these right here, you'll also be grinding out as well. But you'll be grinding this out a bit more than you need to. So, with that being said, how do you grind for these resources in their entirety? Well, again, that all depends on what you need and how much of it you need. Now, there are two missions that you can do. Well, there are several missions you can do in order to get said resources. And to be honest, to get said resources, we're going to go back into the codex and we're going to go into missions. And I'll explain. A couple videos ago, I explained about the different types of missions in this game. There are some missions that are endless, which means the missions don't end. They'll end only when you extract. There are some missions that will end after you complete an objective. Now, the endless missions in this game is defense, excavation, interception, survival. These missions are crucial because these missions always spawn enemies endlessly, regardless of what goes on. Now, what purpose is doing these missions? Well, naturally, you want to farm as much resources as you can in a short period of time. And the reason you want to do that is because when enemies spawn endlessly, you can continue to get resources no matter how far into the mission you are. Now, I'll explain how the different missions will function and how to get different resources. Now, the first mission, defense. Naturally, in defense, you have to protect a specific item or person in order to advance waves. This mission is okay, but it has a pseudo endless enemies in the missions. However, there is a limit to how many enemies can appear in defense missions. The reason why is because in defense missions, when you defeat the required amount of enemies and the last enemy is dead, you eventually finish the wave out. Now, defense is good for doing affinity grinding or experience grinding. It's good for that. However, defense isn't good for getting resources. The reason why is because enemies don't spawn endlessly. They spawn in waves. And the only way you can leave from defense is every 5 waves. Which is good, but it's not lucrative if you want to get what you need. It's good for experience, but it's not good for getting the resources that you want. Since chances are you may need a certain resource, but you have to extract in order to have said resources. So defense is alright, but do defense if you want to upgrade your weaponry to higher ranks. But defense isn't good in terms of collecting resources, since you have to tough it out for another 5 waves. You can't leave in the middle of a defense and cash out. So defense is good for experience, not good for resources. Excavation. Excavation is great because it involves having endless enemies. In a sense, it's kind of the same thing as survival with defense mixed in. But the thing about excavation is that excavation are the only missions that will give out a special resource that you can't get anywhere else, and that is cryotic. Cryotic is a resource that can only be gotten from excavation. Every time you complete an excavation, in its entirety, you'll get 100 cryotic. However, if the excavator is destroyed at any time during the excavation, you'll only get a certain amount of resource from it, a certain amount of cryotic. Which means you have to defend the excavator until it finishes fully. Now, excavation is great for getting cryotic resources, and is great for getting different items as well, since every successful excavation nets you a new item. It could be anything from, as usual, a relic, a mod, credits, etc. So excavation is good, especially since the only way to fully complete an excavation mission is by getting to a certain amount of cryotic, or after you complete the first excavation, depending on the mission type, if it's not an alert. So excavation is good, especially for doing so. It's also good for experience as well. Interception. Interception is also great for doing resource runs and whatnot, but this is also one top mission that's actually great for getting experience, and I'll explain why. In interception, it's basically capture the hill, so to speak, or capture the point, or hard point, depending on your definition of it. Now, when doing interception, if all 4 of your teammates, assuming you have all 4 teammates, do an interception and you all capture all 4 points, you eventually get 500 affinity for it, 500 experience points. Now, this is also good for resources, but if you want to get that bonus often, you can purposely let an enemy take a point, kill them, retake the point, and you'll get 500 affinity. In other words, this is great for farming out experience when you need experience. Do understand that it's best with 4 players, so all 4 players can get the bonus more often. You would get 250 for capturing a point, and you get 500 for controlling all 4. Although this is pretty good, although this is pretty good for getting resources and whatnot, the one danger about this is that you have to go out of your way to get the resources, because enemies may attack one point in the interception, and you have to fight to get it back under control. Now, this is pretty good, especially for doing various things. And last, and certainly not least, one of my favorite missions to do when I'm farm is survival. Survival is great because when you get to a certain point in the game, the first 5 minutes, you get pretty much a reward. The way the rotation in these rewards go in survival or defense or anything goes A, B, and C, and then A, B, C again. In survival, you can get at least 4 separate items in 20 minutes. On top of that, this is the best mission to go to when you want to get a ton of resources, especially if you have a resource booster or an affinity booster. Why is that? Well, since all you have to do is stay for 5 minutes in survival, the only thing you're fighting against is getting life support. When you need life support, you can get it off of enemies that you kill. The decent thing about survival is that the enemies come to you. You don't have to go to them. Same thing with interception, and the same thing with excavation. The enemies are always going to appear where you are. Now, there are certain tile sets in which survival is fundamental in order to effectively farm. Usually wide open areas that has 2 or 3 life support capsules around is best done at that point. Why is it best done at that point? Because you don't have to go far to get the capsule, and the capsule itself will respawn where you are. So that's an instant 30%. Yeah, it's an instant 30% life support boost that you don't have to run away for. That what makes survival the best and the most lucrative thing, well, the most lucrative mission to do, especially with getting resources. Plus, most missions that revolve around survival are dark sectors. Dark sectors, in essence, boost the affinity and the experience you get, and it increases the damage you do with specific weapons, such as shotguns, assault rifles, and certain melee weapons. Now, how do you farm effectively? Well, two ways. Like I said before, you can go to the marketplace and get the resources that you want. For example, equipment. If you get equipment, you can get specific resources unique to you. Some of these are decorations, some of these are actual resources that you'll need. But when you do get said resource, you can use it. But as you can see, all these are pretty much decorations. But anyway, you pretty much get the point. You can get different resources for different things. So when you get different resources, you can get various items. And when you get various items, you can get a ton of stuff that you need. So as you can see, all this is a bunch of decoration, but you pretty much get the picture. Alright, we're gonna go to equipment, components. Now, as I said before, you can outright buy stuff like this, or you can just farm the resource itself. But do understand, if there's anything you can spend your money on, or you can spend your platinum on, which is this right here, you can spend it on resource boosters. Resource boosters come in two different varieties. You got 3-day affinity boosters, which are these right here, and you got 7-day boosters. You also have 30-day affinity. You have also 30-day boosters as well. That's a lot, but I recommend not buying the 30 days, and that's because you don't want to just buy these and barely be on the game. If anything, you can buy the 3-day booster and farm as much as you want. You don't need anything crazy like that. So if you want to farm a ton of resources in a short period of time, getting these boosters is worth it, especially if you intend to grind out. Now, with that in hand, then it's best to go out into the world and start farming resources. And I'll explain what each of these mean. So for example, I want to do a survival mission on Saturn. It has the resources I need: plastids, organ cells, detonite ampules, nanospores. So naturally, I would go to an area such as this, which is referred to as a resource node. Basically, this is a dark sector. I don't know if they still call it a dark sector, but you'll get stuff such you'll see a bunch of information like this. You will see the name of the mission, you will see the level of the enemies, and you will see bonus down there. The bonus you'll get for being here, you will get a 20% resource drop chance. So basically, those resources on the side, you'll get 20% more of them. You'll also get 50% more affinity from killing enemies, and you'll get an additional 10% affinity when you kill enemies with shotguns. So if you have a shotgun in the mission, you can get 10% more affinity, especially if you're leveling up weapons. So this is great for grinding out those items that you need and the resources. Every planet in this game has one node that you can farm out resources for. That's just one. This is another area that you can get resources from. However, this is for disruption. However, for this one, you would get a 25% resource drop chance, an 18% affinity from kills, and a 13% affinity from pistol kills. Plus, the infestation level is going to be between 30 and 35, which means it starts off fairly high. But like I said, every one of these planets have one resource node referred to as a dark sector that gives you one specific resource. The only exception to this rule is the Kuva Fortress and the Void. Both these areas do not have those special nodes. However, every other planet does have them. If you look at this little marker right here, you can't really see it. I apologize, but yeah. But this little marker right here, that little Tenno symbol, that refers to a dark sector. Like this is also a dark sector. This is a dark sector. But it's like I said before, each one of these areas have two nodes, have one or more nodes, or dark sectors that you can go to. Let me see, does Deimos have one? I don't think it does. Oh no, Deimos doesn't have one. Deimos is a brand new open world area that has the Necrolis and Cambion Drift. But yeah, every single area has at least one or two areas that you can farm resources in. Remember to keep that in mind, especially when you want to get various resources. Now, before I close out, the second thing I want to mention to you, and I kind of open it up constantly, and that's on the lower right-hand corner of the screen. You'll see this little drone icon. Those things are called extractors. Whenever you're offline or whenever you're in game, you can deploy extractors, which can get these resources. So these 3 resources I got, I can claim these as I deploy them into the game itself. Now I could do resource drones in one of 2 different ways. I could deploy resource drones in game as I'm playing right now, or I can do resource drones on the companion app, the Warframe Nexus app itself. Now, what are the benefits of doing it? Well, for starters, if you unlock all nodes on a single map, on a single planet, like this, you can deploy an extractor. Now, every five mastery ranks, you can deploy 1 additional resource drone. So since I'm past rank 15, rank 18, I can deploy 3 resource drones. But when I reach rank 20, I can deploy 4. So, again, what are the benefits? Well, naturally, the benefits of doing the resource drones is that you can get one of these resources right here, depending on the resource drone that you have. There are actually 3 different resource drones. I have Titan extractors, which can get me regular resources. I want to back out of that. Go on this. I got distilling extractors, which can get me more of a rarer resource. Although it's not seen here, you can also get prime Titan extractors or prime distilling extractors. Now, prime distilling extractors and Titan distilling extractors extract more. However, the only way to get those is by being a founder in the game itself. Unfortunately, there's no other way to get those resource drones. You can't build them. You can't build those resource drones at all. The only way to get those resource drones is to be a founder when the game first started. Much like how there's only one frame you cannot get in the game, no matter how hard you try in order to get it, unless you're a founder of the game. Anyway, that's pretty much it for this video right here. Now, to summarize, farming in this game isn't as bad as you make it out to be if you go to specific planets and you go to specific nodes to farm said resources. But like I said, in order to get certain resources, it's best to do survival. Survival is great because once you get to 5 minutes, you don't have to stick around. But you can stick around longer if you want to get more lucrative resources. Also, if you have a lot of crowd control weapons, such as the one I have on my back, the Amprax, you can kill more enemies at once and collect all their resources. Another thing is to make sure you're at a right tile set where you have 2 or 3 life support capsules and you don't have to go far to get them, because life support capsules spawn periodically throughout the entirety of the mission. Plus, since you get personal resource, plus you can get personal life support systems from enemies as they have a chance to drop it. So all in all, farming is effective in this game once you know what you're looking for and how much of it you need. Use resource boosters and affinity boosters when you want to get a lot more of a resource as well. But anyway, that's it for me for this video. And in closing, if you do like my content or would like to see me do a future video in this, be sure to like, subscribe, hit the bell, leave a comment down below, and make sure to follow me on my socials, which will also be down in the description. Now, until then, I'll catch you guys later.